I remember the day my own daughter spoke to me like I was a stranger. And the worst part wasn't what she said. It was how easily she said it, like I'd stopped being her father a long time ago. If you've ever had someone you love cross a line, you didn't think they could tell me your story in the comments. I walked into the Queen Anne funeral home without telling anyone. No reason to announce myself. People who once called me family moved around the room in dark clothes, greeting each other like a gathering they'd rehearsed. No one looked my way. A few caught a glimpse and turned aside, pretending to focus on the framed photos lined along the aisle. Two security staff near the entrance shifted as if unsure what to do with me. One stepped closer and spoke. "Sir, the guest list is already arranged. We'll need you to stand near the back. No hostility. Just procedure delivered with a practiced calm." I moved to the corner. He pointed at hands tucked in my coat pockets, pretending the distance didn't sting. Lydia stood at the front behind a wooden podium, her posture steady in a way that reminded me of her mother. She went through a well-polished tribute childhood memories, the strength of a single mother, the generosity her mother supposedly carried through every chapter of her life. People nodded as if they knew the full story. Then she added a line that thinned the air around me. "Her estate will be transferred to the family foundation. Anyone who's no longer part of this family won't have a say in her wishes." Her gaze swept across the room, touching me for a split second before gliding on. A conversation resumed somewhere to my left. Two relatives whispered about the ex-husband who walked out years ago. They'd built a version of me that fit the story they preferred. The service ended, chairs shifted, people leaned in for soft farewells. Lydia hugged an aunt, then a cousin. Not once did she turn around. I waited until the crowd thinned enough to move, without bumping into anyone. A table near the door held a guest registry, and the names filled several pages. Mine wasn't among them. The printed invitation list beside it didn't include me either. My thumb pressed into the edge of the paper, years together, years apart. And yet my absence fit neatly into their arrangement. On the steps outside, the slope of Queen Anne stretched downward toward the street. A few guests walked past, giving me that polite half-nod people use on strangers. The distance between me and the life I once had felt fixed, not temporary. I heard Lydia's voice behind me before leaving. Not directed at me, but loud enough. He shouldn't expect a single cent from her. Mom left everything to me. Another woman murmured something sympathetic. Lydia didn't lower her tone. The sentences slid under my ribs and stayed there. No confrontation followed, no argument. Nothing needed to be said. Some lines don't require volume to cut deep. They simply confirm what's already broken. The hill carried me down toward the bus stop, and my legs kept moving long after the funeral home disappeared behind me. Reaching Ballard took less than 30 minutes. Unlocking the apartment felt like stepping into a space that hadn't changed, even though everything else had. The mail sat where I left it. A stack of tools leaned in the corner, waiting for a project I never finished. None of it offered comfort. The silence pressed in harder than usual, as if the day had carved out a new emptiness. A jacket landed over the back of a chair. Shoes slipped off near the door. Movements stayed mechanical. Muscle memory kept the night in order, while my mind sorted through the weight of what had happened. Lydia's words clung to me not because of the money she claimed, but the ease with which she erased me from her mother's story. Years of parenting and sacrifice compressed into one dismissive sentence. My phone lit up with notifications. A cousin of my ex-wife posted a long tribute about the unwavering strength of a single mother who built everything alone. Another relative shared a photo album and thanked everyone who stood by her through the hard years. Comments echoed the same theme: independence, resilience, triumph without a partner. Then the side remarks followed. Someone showed up today who shouldn't have. Awkward moment at the service. People need boundaries. The omission stung more than the criticism. They weren't angry. They simply treated me like a footnote they wished had never existed. Scrolling further, a distant aunt wrote, "He had no place there. None." Breathing grew shallow for a moment. Putting the phone face down didn't stop the noise in my head. Leaving it on the table, I walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with tap water, and leaned against the counter. The question that surfaced was simple. Let it go, or push back? Years of carrying a family through medical scares, job losses, tuition bills, and the slow unraveling of my marriage had shaped me into the kind of man who chose peace over conflict. Yet something about the funeral, the whispers, and the look Lydia gave me hinted at a boundary crossed long before I noticed it. The phone buzzed again, this time with a number I recognized. Jared Monroe. We hadn't talked in months. He'd been a colleague. I respected someone who noticed the small details others ignored. I answered on the second ring. "Marcus, I just heard what happened. Man, I'm sorry." His voice carried genuine concern, not the polite kind people use out of obligation. "Didn't expect you to call Jared. I figured you might be having a rough time. How you holding up?" Choosing words felt harder than usual. "Managing." He paused, listening between the lines. Jared always had that ability. Anything off about the service, I know how her family can be. A humorless exhale slipped out. "They didn't want me there. That much was clear." "Damn. I'm sorry. Look, when my uncle passed last year, we had a mess with his estate. Lawyers everywhere. Did she ever redo her will?" The question landed heavy. My ex-wife hadn't mentioned any changes recently. Lydia never brought it up either. Something twitched in the back of my mind. "Why? Seattle keeps duplicate copies at the county office. Even when families try to hide things, a certified version stays archived. Just saying, if anything feels strange, it might help to check, that's all." His tone stayed neutral, not pushing, not suggesting wrongdoing. Still, the idea stirred something. "I'll think about it." "Do that, and if you need anything, call me." The call ended, but the silence in the apartment shifted. Thoughts tangled with each other. The missing invitation, the pointed remarks, Lydia's final line at the service, and now this reminder that legal documents sometimes told a different story than the people surrounding them. Evenings in this apartment usually settled into a predictable routine, but nothing followed routine tonight. I walked across the room, opened a drawer, then closed it again without taking anything. Restlessness kept my steps moving. Reaching the small desk tucked against the window, I lowered myself into the chair, rubbed the bridge of my nose, and tried to untangle the knot forming in my chest. The idea of checking the will felt intrusive, almost disrespectful. Yet the alternative sitting, while others built a narrative around me, tightened around my ribs. Years spent trying to avoid conflict hadn't earned me understanding or trust. They'd simply made me convenient to ignore. A message arrived from a neighbor who'd seen photos online. "Rough day, man. Didn't know you." And she still talked. The assumption stung in its own way. People had rewritten the past so thoroughly that even basic facts were now rumors. Letting out a slow breath, I stood up and walked toward the hallway closet. A metal lockbox sat on the top shelf where I'd left it after the divorce, untouched for years. In it were papers from a life I hadn't revisited, medical files, insurance forms, and a few envelopes she'd asked me to keep safe before things fell apart. The lockbox felt heavier than it used to. Setting it on the dining table, I reached into a drawer for the small ring of keys I hadn't used in ages. The right one was still attached, a narrow brass key with a faint scratch near the tip. Holding it for a moment brought back a fragment of memory, her asking me to guard the paperwork, saying I was the only one she trusted to keep things organized. Strange how trust turned into silence, and then into omission. The key slid into the lock, but I didn't turn it yet. Hands rested on the lid, steadying themselves. Not out of fear, just recognition that opening this box might pull me into something I hadn't planned to confront. The lid lifted with a slow scrape, and a mix of old envelopes, manila folders, and clipped forms filled the box. Papers she once handled with care now lay in uneven stacks. A few folders sat at odd angles, as if someone rummaged through them without bothering to restore the order she always kept. Tracing a hand across the top layer stirred a faint ache. She had been meticulous, almost disciplined to a fault. Disarray never belonged to her. A gray folder tucked beneath an insurance packet felt unfamiliar. Pulling it out revealed a thin sheet from a notary office in Fremont. The date at the top stopped me in place 14 months earlier. That had been a decent stretch of time when her health stabilized. She managed outings with friends, went to the market alone, even talked about planning a trip with Lydia. No mention of revisiting her will. We'd spoken about mundane things then. The thought of estate planning never surfaced. The fact that this slip existed at all unsettled me. A phone rang on the dining table, the tone sharp enough to pull me out of my thoughts. The caller ID displayed Mrs. Kincaid, my former neighbor from the house we once shared. Answering brought a tremor of curiosity. "Marcus, dear, I didn't see you at the house lately. Are you doing all right?" Her warm voice steadied the moment. We exchanged a few polite words before she shifted to something unexpected. "I meant to tell you, months ago, when you were out of town for work, Lydia came by with that lawyer of hers. They had a big plastic bin. Looked like they were sorting papers. I assumed you knew." The words landed with a dull thud. My grip on the phone tightened. "You're sure it was them?" "Oh, absolutely." I waved at Lydia through the window, but she didn't come over. They stayed inside for an hour or so. A small silence stretched before I thanked her. The call ended, leaving a heavy stillness. Whatever story I carried in my head about the family's behavior at the funeral gained new, darker edges. Lydia and Thomas had gone through my home, my private space, while I was away gathering documents that clearly linked to the estate. Returning to the lockbox, I sifted through the remaining folders. Pages that once formed complete sets were missing, and others held faint indentations where staples had been removed. Someone had sorted through these with purpose. Reaching for my phone again, I checked the shared bank account my ex-wife and I kept for handling lingering medical bills. Access had been disabled. The error message displayed insufficient permissions. A second attempt triggered a security prompt denying entry. That account should have remained open through probate. Yet here it was sealed off without warning. A growing unease pushed me to the bedroom, where a smaller file drawer held copies of medical records. Sliding the drawer open revealed several empty sleeves. The discharge summary from her last treatment wasn't there. The medication list had vanished. Whoever handled these documents didn't leave random gaps. They targeted anything tied to power of attorney medical decision rights or estate value. A ripple of frustration swelled inside my chest. Letting the drawer close, I walked back to the table, spread the remaining papers out, and used my phone to capture images one by one. Every form, every receipt, every scan, anything that still carried her handwriting or signatures. The notary slip from Fremont received extra attention. Both sides photographed and saved to a locked folder. Thomas called twice while I worked. His name appeared on the screen with a cold persistence. I let it ring through. A third call followed minutes later. This time I silenced the phone without hesitation. Whatever he demanded, I wasn't ready to give. A text arrived. "We need your signature on the waiver to prevent administrative delays. Please be cooperative." The word cooperative felt more like a threat than a request. Old routines no longer grounded me. Even the apartment felt altered. The idea that people had combed through parts of my life while claiming moral high ground scraped at my nerves. Something fundamental had shifted, and ignoring it would be foolish. Standing, I carried a stack of folders to the desk where the light hit better. A sticky note clung to the back of one folder in unfamiliar handwriting, a hurried scrawl saying "review later." That wasn't my ex-wife's writing. Lydia's letters bent a certain way. This looked like a man's hand. Thomas, most likely. The realization sent a low pulse of anger through my ribs, but emotion didn't spiral. Stoicism wasn't a performance. It served me now, narrowing my focus instead of letting anything explode outward. A notification pinged from my laptop. An automated email from King County's record system appeared in the corner of the screen. The subject line read, "Access Log Alert." Opening it revealed a brief message. Documents pertaining to beneficiary Marcus Hale have been requested or viewed 3 times within the last month. A chill threaded down my spine. Not theatrical, not exaggerated, just a quiet awareness that someone had been digging through records tied directly to me. The apartment settled into an uneasy calm. Folders lay open on the table, my phone rested face down again, and the message from the county hovered on the screen. Thoughts continued shifting, too many pieces to arrange yet. A chair scraped softly as I sat back down, elbows on the table, eyes on the notary slip from Fremont. The notary slip from Fremont stayed on my mind through the night. By morning, the decision formed without ceremony. A jacket went on keys pocketed, and I headed toward the northbound lanes. Fremont sat less than 20 minutes away if traffic cooperated. The drive didn't offer clarity, but it kept my thoughts from looping in circles. Inside the notary office, a receptionist greeted me with a professional smile. She checked the computer when I handed her the slip. "Yes, your wife met with one of our notaries about 14 months ago." Her tone shifted as she clicked through more screens. "I'm afraid access to the full file is restricted. The account is locked." "Locked by whom? I can't see that information. Only that permissions were changed recently." A weight settled in my stomach. Someone had sealed the documents, and whoever did it wasn't me. The receptionist apologized for not being able to help further. She printed only a basic confirmation of the visit, nothing more. I folded it into my pocket, thanked her, and left the building. The trip back to Ballard felt heavier than the drive out. Pulling into the parking lot, I noticed my doormat slightly off-center. Small detail, but out of place. Unlocking the door revealed a slip of paper resting on the kitchen counter. Lydia's handwriting sprawled across it. "Don't make this harder. Mom didn't want you involved in her finances. Please sign the waiver." A pen lay beside the note, as if she expected me to sit down and finish the job. Heat rose in my chest, a sharp push against the restraint I'd been practicing for days. Someone entering my home without permission wasn't a misunderstanding. It crossed into something different, something that chipped away at the last bit of trust between us. Before the anger could settle, my phone buzzed with a new email. From Thomas. His message read, "If you continue attempting to access files that are not intended for you, we'll be forced to take legal steps to secure the estate. This is your final warning." The phrasing carried the polished courtesy of someone used to manipulating fear, the kind who wrapped threats in legal jargon so clean you almost missed the venom. My jaw clenched as I reread the message. Another blow arrived an hour later. A group thread among extended relatives lit up with notifications. Lydia posted a paragraph accusing me of interfering with the grieving process and creating unnecessary trouble over money. Several family members chimed in with sympathetic replies toward her. One uncle claimed he'd always known I'd cause issues eventually. My name slid further down the social ladder with every response. Years of effort, support, and sacrifice flattened into a caricature. A choice stood in front of me: disappear or understand exactly what happened. Opting for the latter, I grabbed my jacket again and drove toward Bellevue. A relative of my ex-wife, Uncle Roger, lived there, a man who stayed neutral during the divorce, someone who rarely lied even when lying made things easier. He opened the door with a tired smile. "Marcus, didn't expect you. I won't take much of your time. Just need to ask about the will. Did she ever tell you she changed it recently?" Roger hesitated, thinking through the question. "She mentioned updating some papers last spring. Said Lydia helped her schedule something at a notary office. Fremont, maybe. But the date doesn't match what Lydia told us last week. She said it was done closer to Thanksgiving. Two conflicting timelines. One from a man who had no stake in the drama, another from the daughter who stood to gain everything." Roger stepped aside to let me in, but I declined. The information was enough. His face held concern, though he didn't push for details. Driving back, the city blurred past without much notice. Every piece added tension to a rope already stretched. By the time I reached Ballard, the day had bitten through whatever patience remained. At the apartment entrance, something white peeked from the metal mailbox. A sealed envelope thicker than junk mail bore the seal of the notary office in Fremont. No return address beyond the printed header. My fingers traced the raised stamp before tearing the top edge. Inside lay a short letter acknowledging an irregular access attempt on a file connected to my name. A photocopy of a timestamp report accompanied it. Someone had requested those documents multiple times, just like the automated county email hinted. Standing in the hallway, envelope still open, I let the information settle. Not dramatically, not with rage. The envelope from Fremont sat unopened for a while on the dining table. Eventually, the need to know overcame whatever hesitation remained. Tearing the flap revealed a single folded sheet and a faint copy of a filing slip. At the top, in neat print, was the name of the person who submitted the documents, L. Hale. Seeing my daughter's name in that context sent a current of disbelief through me. The date printed underneath matched a period when my ex-wife had been doing relatively well. She'd mentioned wanting to clean up some paperwork, nothing more. It never crossed my mind that Lydia might be involved in whatever change had taken place. Back then, life still carried enough normal rhythm that suspicion felt unnecessary. The thought lingered until it grew into something sharper. A memory surfaced from around that same time, my ex-wife laughing in the kitchen about misplacing a grocery list. Mundane moments now tangled with questions I hadn't asked. The next morning, Jared met me at a small diner near South Lake Union. He waved me over with a half-smile, the kind he used when bracing for complicated news. Sliding into the booth, I passed him the sheet from Fremont. He studied it carefully, tapping his finger near the date. "Something's off here, Marcus. Look at the filing date versus the notary stamp. They don't line up with standard timelines. And you said she was in stable condition then. Better than she'd been in months." Nothing suggested urgency. "That's exactly it. If she'd been revising her will, the notary date should align with her medical timeline. Your wife was readmitted for testing about a week after this, right?" My throat tightened. "Yes." "Then the signing doesn't match the phase she was in. Legal paperwork usually gets done earlier or much later, not in the middle of fluctuating health unless someone else is coordinating it." He set the document down and leaned back, giving me space to process. His next words came quieter. "The county keeps a master version of every certified will, one that can't be edited or selectively shown. If you want clarity, that's where you look." The advice settled like a stone in my mind. Checking the official record meant stepping into a conflict I'd avoided for years, but doing nothing guaranteed being shut out completely. Protector instincts pushed for peace, yet something deeper insisted I look. Letting others rewrite the truth wouldn't restore stability. It would bury it. While driving home, my phone vibrated non-stop. Notifications piled one after another. Opening the social feed revealed a new post from Lydia. She wrote a long, emotional paragraph about children cleaning up their mother's affairs while certain people try to claim what they don't deserve. No names mentioned, but the implication hit with precision. Relatives left comments filled with sympathy for her and disapproval aimed at me. A few texted directly asking why I couldn't respect her grief. Scrolling left a sour taste at the back of my throat. People who once asked me for help now accused me of greed based on a single post. The shift in tone felt deliberate, not coincidental. A new message arrived from an unknown number. Check the will again. Someone hid a page. The words blinked on the screen, short but impossible to ignore. The sender remained anonymous. No clue whether it came from someone trying to help or someone stirring chaos. Either way, it confirmed that pieces of this puzzle weren't fitting together naturally. The living room felt too small for the weight of everything pressing against my ribs. I set my phone down, walked a few steps, turned and came back. Standing still made it worse. Eventually, I grabbed the coat draped on the back of a chair, slipped my arms through the sleeves, and locked the door behind me. The drive toward downtown Seattle unfolded without much thought. Street names passed by like faint suggestions. At a red light, a familiar line from a book I'd read years ago flashed through my mind. Truth doesn't vanish when ignored, it waits. The timing struck me harder than expected. King County's administration building appeared ahead, its gray structure ordinary enough that people rarely noticed it. But inside were the records capable of ending the confusion or confirming my worst fears. Walking through the glass doors, I approached the information desk. I need to request access to a certified estate document. The clerk nodded, sliding over a form. Fill this out and we'll schedule an appointment for you to view it. Some documents require verification before release. The pen felt light in my hand while completing the fields. Name, date of birth, relation to the deceased. Each line pulled me further into a process I'd avoided until now. When I returned the clipboard, she scanned the sheet and typed for several minutes before speaking again. We can fit you in later this week. You'll receive a confirmation email with the exact time. I thanked her, not trusting myself to add anything else. Leaving the building didn't bring relief. It simply marked the point of no return. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop, letting passengers off in small groups. One of them brushed past, mumbling into a phone about work deadlines. Normal life continued around me, indifferent to the storm I'd walked into. Reaching my car, I sat behind the wheel without turning the key. The appointment form rested in my lap. The edges curled under my fingers from the pressure. Whatever truth waited in those files would change everything. Whether it cleared the fog or deepened, it didn't matter anymore. The next move was already set in motion. After a few steady breaths, the ignition turned, and the car eased into traffic. The appointment notice would arrive soon. The appointment notice arrived the next morning, a short confirmation telling me to appear at King County Records by noon. The timing worked. Leaving early avoided the crowd, and the drive cut through familiar streets without drawing my attention. By the time the parking structure came into view, something inside had already settled into place. Not calm, exactly, more like a sharpened steadiness, the kind that comes when hesitation burns off. Inside the records office, a clerk checked my ID, typed a few commands, then motioned for me to follow her to a small review room. A single desk stood in the center, holding a sealed folder marked with the estate number I'd written on the request form. She placed it in front of me. You'll have 20 minutes, no removal of documents, but you can take notes. The door closed behind her, leaving me alone with the file. Opening it revealed the certified will clean official untouched by the edits someone had made elsewhere. My name appeared exactly where it should have designated beneficiary, secondary executor, and financial guardian for a trust my ex-wife intended to establish. Yet a faint pencil line barely visible ran through my name on a printed copy tucked behind the original. Someone had tried to obscure it, not erase it entirely. Almost careless. A slow breath left my chest as I reached for my phone. Photos captured each page quickly, first the original, then the altered copy. Notes followed document number, filing date, clerk's initials, notary ID. Every detail tallied up like steps in a long equation. Whatever story Lydia and Thomas constructed, it didn't match the documents in front of me. The folder closed with a soft motion, and the clerk returned moments later to escort me out. On the sidewalk outside the building, my fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. Pieces that once felt scattered had begun aligning themselves. Across the street, a small cafe offered an empty table near the window. Sitting down, I opened my laptop and arranged the scanned files into a single folder. The pattern grew clearer with every line item, visits timed around my business trips, document requests that came only from Lydia's side updates to financial accounts without my knowledge. A cold clarity settled in, not fueled by anger, but by purpose. Calling Jared seemed natural. He picked up before the second ring. "You sound like a man who found something." I did, or rather I confirmed it. "What's in the file?" Explaining the mismatched stamps, the pencil marks, and the timeline took several minutes. He stayed silent through most of it. "Marcus, I think I remember something from my old job. I might be able to check an email header from Lydia's lawyer. No promises, but let me try." The line paused briefly as he searched. When he returned, his tone had shifted. "Found something strange. Looks like he sent her an email titled Edits to Secondary Copies. I can't see the message body, just the header and timestamp. But it's enough to show communication about altering something. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was definitely smoke. Can you forward that?" Already did. "And Marcus, be careful. People get bold when they think they're about to lose control." Ending the call, I opened my email to see his forward. The metadata showed the message had been exchanged 2 weeks before my wife's notary visit. My hand hovered over the trackpad. The puzzle wasn't finished, but the frame had finally formed. Then the first warning arrived. A blocked number flashed on the screen. Curiosity pushed me to answer. "Stop digging. It's not worth it. No name. No added detail." The line dropped the moment I asked who it was. A minute later, a text appeared. "You're going too far." Annoyance rose faster than fear. It reminded me of something my father used to say. Threats are the last tool of someone losing leverage. The timing told me everything. I'd reached a layer they never expected me to touch. Trying to return to work on the files, I logged into my email again, but stopped cold when the system requested a password change. Then another prompt. Then a third. Someone had triggered a security override. I shut the laptop, grabbed my bag, and left the cafe without finishing the coffee. Ballard's sidewalks filled with people returning from lunch breaks, walking dogs living average afternoons. The ordinary rhythm of the street felt strangely detached from what was unraveling on my end. Unlocking my apartment, I stepped in and closed the door with deliberate care. This wasn't just family conflict anymore. They knew exactly what I'd found. A quick search through my old contacts brought up the number of a lawyer I'd collaborated with years ago on a contract dispute, an independent professional with no ties to Lydia or her relatives. Meeting him felt necessary. I called, shared only the essentials, and secured an appointment for the next day. Leaving the apartment again, I drove back toward the administrative district to refuel the car. Parking by the curb for a moment of stillness, I glanced toward the courthouse across the street. A tall figure stood near one of the pillars watching the lot. His stance was too deliberate to mistake. After a few seconds, he turned, revealing just enough of his profile for recognition to strike hard and fast. Thomas Van. He walked off the moment he realized I'd seen him slipping out of view behind a row of parked cars. No confrontation, no direct message, just a reminder that he was tracking my steps. Downtown moved at its normal weekday pace when I reached the lawyer's building. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have, even though it covered only a few floors. My attorney, Daniel Pierce, greeted me with a firm handshake before leading me into a room lined with overflowing case files. He reviewed my documents with a level of focus that steadied the pulse in my chest. After several minutes, he leaned back. "Marcus, I need you to hear this without reacting, at least not yet. Lydia's attorney filed a petition last night. They're asking the court to restrict your access to all estate records." A dull pressure formed behind my sternum. Daniel wasn't done. "There's more. They've also submitted preliminary statements claiming you may not be mentally fit to manage complex financial matters. They're trying to get ahead of any move you might make." The words landed with a heavy thud. Fabricated incompetence, a tactic families used when cornered. A tactic meant to bury the other party under procedure and suspicion. Daniel kept his eyes steady on me. "If they succeed, you'll lose standing. No access to the will, no ability to contest anything." Hands relaxed on the table so he wouldn't think I was spiraling. Inside, something tightened, not panic, but a slow burn. They'd crossed farther than I expected. Before we could discuss next steps, my phone buzzed. A family acquaintance I rarely spoke to anymore flashed on the screen. Answering brought a hurried voice. "Marcus, you should know Lydia called a family meeting. Right now. Bellevue. She's saying you're causing confusion, and everyone needs to be on the same page." The speed at which everything moved made the morning feel unreal. A sense of being boxed in pressed against my ribs, yet it didn't crack me. The mind has a strange way of hardening when pressure hits a certain threshold. Daniel slid a paper across the desk. "Read this." It was a cleanly formatted waiver. At the bottom, Thomas's signature sat beside a bold line, waiting for mine. Attached to the waiver was a small note from him. "If you escalate this, the media will side with the grieving daughter. Don't embarrass yourself." The arrogance in that sentence cut deeper than the legal move. He believed the narrative he curated would erase me. Years of history reduced to a headline fit for sympathy clicks. The phone vibrated again. A new email, anonymous, just like the first. The subject line read, "Before it's too late." Opening it revealed a single attachment, a scanned page that matched the formatting of the certified will. The missing page, the one confirming my inheritance. My breath steadied on its own. No force needed. Daniel watched me absorb the information. "Whatever you decide, Marcus, don't go alone into whatever meeting they've arranged. You need protection, at least legally. They want to corner me before I can act." "Exactly. You're running out of time to reclaim the narrative." The room grew still. Not silent, just still in the way important crossroads tend to be. Daniel waited, letting me think. Walking away now would let them finish what they'd started, rewriting me out of the story, stripping my rights, painting me as unstable. Every instinct that once begged to avoid conflict had exhausted itself. The protector in me had shielded them long enough. The stoic in me kept the anger contained. The wounded part of me, the father they pushed aside, recognized the last step for what it was. Not vengeance. Correction. I gathered the folder, slipped the printed proofs inside, and thanked Daniel for his time. Outside, the city hummed with its usual rush, but something in me had shifted. Movements sharpened. Thoughts lined up. The meeting in Bellevue wasn't a trap to avoid, it was the place where the truth needed to land. A call came in while I walked to the parking garage. Thomas's number. Ignoring it only made him try again. The voicemail transcribed itself automatically. If you don't sign the waiver today, the family will have no choice but to request legal action against you. Stop fighting a losing battle. The confidence in his tone told me he believed I had no cards left. He didn't know the missing page now sat in my folder, or that the documents from King County held his mistakes. The drive across Lake Washington passed in steady increments. Bridges, exits, familiar landmarks, none of it registered fully. My mind stayed on the pieces I'd assembled. Timestamps, notary slips, altered copies, false petitions, and now the missing page. Bellevue's residential streets kept quiet as I turned into the driveway of the uncle's home, where the meeting supposedly took place. Several cars lined the curb. Shadows moved behind the windows. A cluster of voices floated through the crack in the door when someone entered. The folder rested on the passenger seat. My hand tightened around it before stepping out of the car. Walking toward the entryway, I felt neither dread nor anticipation, just a recognition that this moment had been building long before the funeral. Long before the lies. Long before the signatures forged behind closed doors. My palm pressed against the doorframe as I stepped inside. Conversations halted at once. Dozens of eyes swung toward me, some confused, others accusing. Lydia stood near the center, arms crossed, ready to control whatever version of the story she planned to present. The room stayed silent as I moved closer to the long table in the center. No speeches, no explanations. The folder rested on the wood with a soft thud, and I opened it without ceremony. Pages slid out, each one placed deliberately where every person could see. The certified will went first. Clean signatures, official stamps, and my name exactly where the law intended it to be. A few relatives leaned forward instinctively. No one spoke yet. Next came the missing page, the one someone thought they could erase. The faint crease across the middle showed it had been folded more times than it should have. Lydia's expression tightened as soon as the header became visible. Her jaw twitched, a small tell she used to have as a child whenever guilt surfaced before she could hide it. I laid down the timeline, printout access logs, dates, and a row of entries showing repeated attempts to view or modify documents tied to my name. A murmur rippled through the group. Eyes swung from the paper to Lydia, then back again. The final item was the notary slip from Fremont, the one showing who submitted the paperwork. L. Hale printed neatly at the top. No commentary accompanied any of this. Silence did enough. People who once believed her version of events now faced facts laid out plainly without embellishment or accusation. An older cousin broke first. Lydia, why does this look nothing like what you told us? She stiffened arms, crossing defensively. He's twisting everything. Mom wanted me in charge. She told me. Her voice cracked too sharp, too fast. A few relatives exchanged uneasy glances. Another aunt chimed in this time with less sympathy. Then why is his name in the official record? And why hide a page? The room felt smaller. Lydia tried again. You don't understand. Mom didn't trust him with finances. Someone had to manage it all. Thomas said she stopped herself too late. Uncle Roger pounced on the slip. Thomas said what her eyes darted to the door, as if looking for help. A second later, Thomas himself cleared his throat from the corner where he'd been pretending to fade into the decor. This is getting blown out of proportion. These documents can be misread if you don't know probate law. Let's not jump to conclusions. I didn't move, but several heads turned toward him, with open suspicion now. Roger pressed further. Did you advise her to hide pages? Thomas straightened his tie. Absolutely not. I only provided guidance on preparing alternate copies for internal use. The words alternate copies did not help him. They hung in the air like an admission delivered in legal shorthand. Another voice from the back interrupted. "So you changed them?" Thomas hesitated a beat too long for his own good. Lydia panicked at the pause. "He was helping me protect Mom's assets. That's all." Her flare of desperation cracked the remaining veneer. Relatives began talking over each other now, questions and judgments colliding. I watched the shift confusion turning into realization into anger. A man from the extended family known for handling the clan's larger disputes stepped towards the table. His voice carried enough weight to cut through the noise. "We're turning these over to an independent legal advisor, all of it." Lydia spun toward him. "You can't just— This affects the whole estate. It's not up to you anymore." Her protests lost ground quickly. She saw it, too. Control had slipped from her hands, and the people she assumed would defend her no longer stood beside her. My chair scraped back as I rose. Eyes turned to me, waiting for a speech I had no intention of giving. "I'm not asking for anything more than what she intended, that's all. No dramatics, no anger. Simply the truth stated plainly." The room absorbed it without resistance. Across the table, Lydia looked at me with something between disbelief and resentment. Maybe fear. Hard to tell. I didn't answer whatever question lived behind her expression. She'd made her choices. So had I. A relative asked if I wanted to stay for further discussion. My hand closed the folder and slid it under my arm. "No, you can handle the rest." Walking toward the door, the conversations resumed, hushed, urgent, and no longer directed at me. Thomas attempted one last defense, but his voice drowned under the tide of doubt rising around him. His career might not survive this. Lydia's reputation certainly wouldn't. I didn't pause on my way out. The hallway carried none of the tension from earlier, just the ordinary creak of a settling house. The ferry timetable came into view as I pulled into the lot. Engines idled in the line ahead, while attendants checked tickets. I joined the queue and rested my elbow on the door, letting my mind drift but not linger. When the boarding ramp dropped, cars filed forward. Mine rolled along with them. A few weeks later, a small cabin near the tree line became home. Nothing elaborate, just enough space for a bed, a desk, and tools I hadn't touched in years. A nonprofit had offered part-time consulting on rural energy systems. The work made sense. Quiet, practical, steady. Life didn't transform into anything grand. It simply regained shape. And with each passing day, the noise from the past shrank until it belonged only to where it came from.